by for Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors with your host, Drew Kirby.
Hey, this is Luke Holmes.
I am Morgan Wallen.
I'm Riley Green.
I'm Travis Denning.
Hey, I'm Aaron Lewis.
Hey, it's Luke Bryan.
I'm Tim McGraw.
What's up? This is Ian Munsick.
Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
It's Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors. Drew, along with Janet and Brian Olson from Wyoming Game and Fish. And guys, it is full-on fishing time. And over the last few days, I drove up to the northern part of the state and saw some lakes that were jam-packed. Fishermen and boaters, and all around here, Glendo, I saw a lot of action going on there. Down at Alcova, people are just having a good old time out on the water now that summer is finally here.
Well, Drew, it sounds like I need to have your job if you're getting to travel around and do all that fishing, or at least looking at people fishing. Yes, you are correct. It is a fantastic time of year to be doing fishing. And you bring up a very good point about your traveling and fishing. And we're here today to talk about fishing violations. And one of the most common is not recognizing that fishing regulations change throughout the state. So whether you're at Lake DeSmet outside of Buffalo, Glendo, or Alcova, make sure you know all the ins and outs about where you're fishing.
And it really gets interesting when you get over into like Tetons and Yellowstone, because that's totally off limits some parts and kind of really iffy.
Absolutely. So the Wyoming Game and Fish Department does not regulate fisheries on the Wind River Reservation or within Yellowstone National Park. So if you're fishing those areas, you need to make sure that you have additional licenses. Our licenses are not required in those areas, but you do need their licenses. So make sure that you know where you are at all times, because that can really catch people up, not knowing that information. But in addition to, those areas, you need to make sure that you know where you are for lots of different reasons, for a change in creel limits, for a change in sizes of the species, and what you can actually fish with can change within each drainage across the state.
Is the reason behind that because of the fish that are there and the types of waters it is? Because here we have like Glendo and Alcova and Seminole and Pathfinder that are all kind of on just the North Platte, stretch. But then you have the Wind River and you have the Snake River. And is that the real reason behind all that?
Well, it's just the different drainages. There's different requirements that are managed for each area across the state. And it's not necessarily done by area, it's done more by waters. So we have a lot of different fisheries, and maybe we should have our fish crew on to talk about the different kinds of fisheries we have. We have kind of put and take, which is, where we just stock fish for people to catch. There's not a lot of wild reproduction. We have fisheries that are wild, that are just fish that naturally reproduce, and, so on and so forth. And so creel limits and species of fish are all determined based on the type of fisheries. And, our fish biologists do a lot of science to figure out what these different waters across Wyoming might need. And so they take a look and they say, okay, this is going to be, native cutthroat waters. Let's just make this artificial lure or fly only. Those sorts of things all come into play, and, for lots of different reasons.
And when it comes to fishing regulations, we talked how different they are, but the best part about the Wyoming Game and Fish Department's website is if you're there and you know where you're going to be fishing, you can see all of those regulations, how they vary and vary extremely in some different areas. And Brian, I know that you kind of like to give us the true information and you give it to us straight. How much trouble can people get in if they're bouncing around and they're not properly licensed?
Well, I mean, the most common violation for fishermen is anglers, is not having a fishing license. So, and a conservation stamp that goes along with it. So Of course, most of those people are associated with folks coming from out of state and just start fishing. But there's still a lot of people in Wyoming that live here that forget to buy their fishing license or think they can get by with going out for a day and not getting caught. But I mean, our licenses now are good for 365 days. So when you buy it now, it's good till this time next year, which kind of helps out. But that's the most common violation that we have for our fishermen that are out and about. And the regulations, for fishing can be confusing, kind of like our hunting regulations for a lot of folks, unless you do a lot of it. So if you're an avid fisherman, you know how to read through the regulations and how they're separated out in different areas with like the same as the hunting areas is the same thing as like if you're an avid hunter, you can breeze right through that stuff. But you know what? If it's confusing to you, you're going to go fish below on Gray Reef. It's a good thing to look that up on the regulations because, I mean, you can only fish with artificial flies and lures only. So I think that's one of those things that if you're just going to drive down from Buffalo and go fishing at Gray Reef because you heard the fishing's good, that you wouldn't probably know that unless you actually read the regulations before you came down.
And when it comes to the equipment side of things, you just mentioned that live bait can be used in some and it has to be artificial in others. And there are some places you can use both. And when it comes to the different equipment outside of that, are there any restrictions there of, maybe some of the artificial baits that you can and can't use in some? I know some people like to troll and some people like to, just use an old slip bobber like they did growing up. But can you really be thrown off with a lot of the equipment on that part?
I mean, you can, but I see, like I say, a lot of people, if they're not avid fishermen, it's worth asking, what's considered artificial, bait. And like I say, if there's not a restriction in the regulation book, that means that you can use bait. So we have it in the regulation. So if there's a restriction on that body of water or that portion of the river, that's why it's in the regulation, because it's different than the statewide regs. When one of the other common violations for equipment wise is right now, during this time of year, you can actually fish with 2 poles, but some people think 3 or 4 is better. But actually the regulation says you only can fish with two poles per person. So I think that's important. Another thing that we have a lot of people ask about is if you are young enough that you don't need a license and you're a resident, does that mean that you can catch the limit of fish like an adult? And if you're a resident kid, yes, you can. You have your own limit. But if you're a non-resident kid, you actually don't have your own limit. You're actually fishing with the person that has a license. So you're going with that.
And the definition of kid can be, fairly interesting, but you need to remember that anglers under 14 and older need a license. So 13, 12, 11, 10. I had to think there for a second how to count backwards. It is that kind of a day, but it really is important too that folks know that age from 14 and older, they need a license. Now that's not an expensive license. If you look in our regulations, it's pretty inexpensive, but they do need a license. But again, they can have their own creel limit that goes to their license. And so that can be an advantage if you're out and about doing a lot of fishing.
And Brian, I want to touch, and I know that we've talked about this before, but the possession of fish that you have isn't always just what you have. It could be what is at home too, correct?
That's right. Your possession limit, that's what you have in possession. So that includes what's in your live well and what's in your freezer. So if the possession limit is 6 walleye, that means your possession limit, the amount that's under that you have caught and you have in your possession, not only in your boat, but also in your camp and at your house. So that's the possession limit. And like I said, some people get confused in that, but like I say, the avid fishermen, pretty well know that is what the possession limit means.
So like in my household where you have 5 anglers, each person can have that, right? So that each person that they catch, it needs to be fish that they have personally caught. You can't just go catch them all yourself and send them underneath their license. But just keep that in mind, that it's not a total for your household. It's for each license.
So it's
Drew,
per
that doesn't
license.
mean that you can invite a bunch of people to your house to stay over and use your freezer, and that just means you can keep more fish in your freezer. That's not what that means.
See, and that's another one of those regulations that I think people forget about, because they're going to be like, oh, well, how are they going to know that, my wife didn't catch those? But if your wife doesn't have a fishing license, you're officially over the limit of what you could have.
And, Drew, a lot of that just comes down to personal ethics and doing the right thing, right? Those are in place to help manage a fishery for different reasons. And so keeping that in mind, it's just based on your own personal ethics and honesty, and making the right choice, not only for yourself, but to set another example for other people as well.
Another thing that we've talked about a lot are the AIS stickers, the aquatic invasive species decals and everything that you have to have on all water vessels. And if you come in from Colorado and you have kayaks, you have to get those inspected. You have to get the sticker. If someone gets caught without having their AIS, what kind of trouble can you get in there?
If your boat has been in the water outside of the state of Wyoming, either coming from outside of the state, so you're a non-resident boat, or if you're a resident boat and you've been fishing at, waters in Nebraska or even South Dakota, you have to have it inspected before you put it on the body of water in Wyoming. So if you put it on the body of water without being inspected, it's a very hefty fine, because it wasn't not, checked to make sure that there wasn't any, species, AIS species on your boat. Or on your trailer when you come to the state of Wyoming or put it in Alcova or Glendo. And it's a really, really big deal. And you also have to have not only an inspection, but you also have to have an AIS sticker, which you can purchase on your phone online, and just use the receipt that you obtain from that and use that as your AIS sticker until you receive one in the mail. Or you can stop by any game and fish office and you can get a AIS sticker for your kayaks and your boat.
And Drew, again, this just goes back to your own personal ethics, right? Is it dark? Are you going to launch? No one's around. No one's looking. Can you squeak by without having to spend 3 minutes at an inspection? Absolutely. But as we've talked about a lot lately, aquatic invasive species, zebra quagga mussels are close by. South Dakota, they've had some in Colorado, and, Wyoming is still negative. And anglers are not going to like what happens if those species get into our waters. And so being diligent in trying to keep our waters clean is absolutely preservation for your own future fishing endeavors. So while people come from all over the country to fish in Wyoming's, fantastic waters and fisheries that we offer, that can pose problems. And, a simple 3-minute inspection can help save all these fisheries that we're talking about. And I'm pretty sure, again, no one will like the regulations that will be put into place, unfortunately, if these do get introduced.
I think the right now, the inconvenience of having your boat checked at AIS check station is very, very, the amount of time you're there is very little. These people are professionals. They've been doing it, all summer long. So they know they get through it really fast. But like say, if we end up having, zebra mussels, quagga mussels in the state of Wyoming, it'll be a much more inconvenience if you use those waters and leave the waters type of thing too. So the convenience will be a lot longer. Stay cleaning your boats out before you're allowed to, leave that body, that place before you go on another body of water in the state of Wyoming. So it's going to be a lot tougher to deal with in the future if we end up getting them here.
And as you've said multiple times, if you're an avid fisherman, more than likely you're aware of all this. But if you're not an avid fisherman, it's definitely something that could be a concern, because if you don't know, you don't know unless you really research it and know what you have to do. And obviously, contacting Game and Fish, going to the Game and Fish website, You can download the regulations manual onto your phone, have it with you at all times. Same thing with hunting. It's always good to be overly informed than being underinformed. So we will once again give you any information you need if you go to wgfd.wyo.gov or contact Game and Fish.
Absolutely, Drew. Don't forget, we're just a phone call away.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
It's Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, and Brian Woodward is with me as always. And Brian, we're to the dog days of summer, I think is what they call this. August is right here.
And it is hot outside.
Isn't it funny how we were all like, man, it's going to be a great summer all year long. We're not going to have any heat. Ha ha! Tricked you.
Surprise.
But one of the best parts is that it's kind of drying up a little bit in some of the places we've had lots of water and issues. So getting out and hiking and camping really is an option for a lot of folks now.
Yeah, as it's really getting hot down here in the lowland, it's still, 10 degrees cooler, even up on Casper Mountain. So it's a great time to grab a couple lawn chairs and grab a barbecue and enjoy the higher elevation.
Of course, Bear Trap is a great option for you to go and have a great peaceful afternoon, a picnic. But coming up, it's going to get kind of wild with Bear Trap Summer Festival, and obviously to go up there, no chairs are provided, but you can get chairs here.
Yeah, and if you haven't been to Bear Trap, it's kind of a nice just way to kind of relax and kick back for a weekend, but being comfortable and having a good chair, maybe an umbrella, maybe a little tent, and then, there's always that chance for these late afternoon thunderstorms. So we talked about rain gear and ponchos and that kind of stuff. Just make sure that you can enjoy the weekend.
One thing that I've been seeing a lot of lately are families that are getting into hiking. Kids are growing up a little bit, and they've got a little bit more, feet under them at this point. Mm-hmm. And the trail system that we have on Casper Mountain is fantastic. But we're going to talk on the show with the Pathfinders with the Wyoming State Parks, where there's hiking trails and side-by-side trails and mountain biking trails all over the state that are open for use. So if you and the family want to get in, it's always good to spend a little money up front on good quality gear.
Yeah, and I've been seeing a lot of my friends that are just trying to get in shape or stay in shape, and they're taking their family out on walks up on like the Bridle Trail, and just some simple things to kind of make sure that you have a good trip. And maybe it's just something as simple as bug spray, but a Camelback with some hydration where you can just throw it on your backpack, and then maybe a good set of trekking poles.
Obviously, maybe some hiking boots as well, and you guys carry the Danner line, which I've been looking into Danner a lot. They're very quality boots, and the thing about these boots is you have to get them and wear them. You can't just let them sit in the closet for them to properly work.
Yeah, you got to break those boots in, and we've talked about that for hunting season, especially on some of those higher end like Kenetrek boots. A lot of those boots kind of require like a 50-mile break-in just before you're real comfortable, and then of course having a good pair of socks, and we carry Smart Wool, we carry Danner, we carry Darn Tough, all some really good quality hiking socks. So
you mentioned hunting and elk hunting will be here, and the deer and antelope. We're just a couple of weeks out from some of those seasons. When people are starting to plan like that, like me, I haven't been on an elk hunt in Wyoming before. Right. It's a lot different than hunting the Midwest where everything's flat and you're sitting all the time. So, having that proper equipment and using it and getting used to it now is a good option. Yeah,
and we're already seeing some guys that, just getting their bows out of the closet and realizing that they need strings for their bow. And unfortunately, these bow manufacturers and these string manufacturers, they're already 2 to 3 to 4 weeks out for strings. So if you're planning a August 15th hunt and you haven't ordered strings for your bow, it's a good time to bring that bow in. Let's get the strings ordered. Even if you're just kind of on the edge of thinking you maybe need a string, come in, let's get them ordered, and then you can put it in your case. And as long as they're kept in a nice, cool area and not directly into the sun, those are going to be great use. So maybe you'll be able to get through the season with your current set, but nothing's worse than, being out there and maybe you dry fire your bow and then now you don't have a string to replace it with. So a little planning ahead of time, and especially as we're getting into these seasons, you have to kind of go through and check all your old gear, make sure, for one, it still fits, and make sure you get the, whatever firearm or bow out there and get them sighted in.
Now, one thing here is you guys have bow techs that are on site. You have the shooting range in the back, and you mentioned about not getting your bow out for a year. Lots can happen just bouncing around and bouncing off of it.
Yeah, I'm not even really planning on using my bow this year, but a couple weeks ago I took it out to the guys at the counter and just said, hey, can you make sure the timing's still good, make sure the strings are still good. I went back into the range, I ran a few arrows through it, and realized that I need to work that upper body a little bit to pull back what I was pulling. But yeah, you got to get it out there, and you got to kind of get planned and prepped ahead of time, and make sure that your boots are in good shape, and maybe you're putting some sealant on it, some waterproofing on them. All that kind of stuff just kind of plays into making sure you're going to have a good trip.
Get on out here and check it out at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports for all your outdoor needs.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
It's Drew and Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports back, and Brian, fishing has been, it hasn't been horrible all year long.
It's been actually really good almost all year long.
Which is really kind of weird. It seems like in the past you kind of go through stretches where maybe you're not having a good day, but that really hasn't happened this year too often. And as a matter of fact, Glendo is still producing fish just as good now as it was in late May.
Yeah, it's a little bit different fishing, and definitely we're starting to see some smaller fish, in the mix a little more frequently. But yeah, it's still fishing fantastic. Talking to guys that have been fishing Alcove and Pathfinder, both are fishing okay, kind of typical for both of those reservoirs. What's kind of surprising is the guys that have been targeting kokanee over the last couple of years, they seem to be struggling finding the kokanee a little more than they had in the previous years. So I'm not really sure what's up there, but I'm sure guys will figure that out as well. There's plenty of them in there. And if you want a challenge, that's something to target after. And then, of course, Pathfinder, we had the tournament at Seminole. Lots of fish, lots of little fish. But, we saw, Jay's fishing league this last week. One of the
Kayla.
The Armand Trout family.
Yeah.
They landed a 30-plus inch fish. So, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, the fish was as big as she was.
Probably weighed as much for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to see fish being caught, and that really is one of the key factors in keeping people going back out. And that's kind of my first thought when Kayla was part of catching that big fish was she's hooked now because, they're catching fish and they're seeing those fish. So, but
maybe also ruined, right?
Well, that's true too. And it was the day before Dad's birthday, and they won. That's a pretty good birthday present. Right?
Yeah, and any time you can get out, whether it's during a league night, whether it's during a tournament, whether it's just fun fishing for the weekend. You're outside with your family, and you're creating memories that you couldn't do from the couch.
Right. So you were talking a little while ago that being out on Glendo for the last couple of weeks, you've been fishing with some buddies, and you tried some things that you thought were going to work with some plastics that you went back to the old jig and worm, and sure enough.
It's the year of the worm, I tell you. No, and it's... And maybe just, I kind of look at it as kind of a steak. You put a steak in front of you and I, we're going to eat it. It doesn't matter if it's on a paper plate or ceramic plate. But, a jig and a worm's kind of the same thing. And if there's fish are always eating worms. And, even if it's not worm season, you put a donut in front of me, I'm going to eat it. But, so you can kind of gauge, how the bite's going to be based on, how they're biting and what they're eating. And if they're not eating a worm, it's probably going to be a slow bite anyways. But, it's been kind of hit or miss. Like sometimes we go down there and we can just throw a jig and a worm and no problem. If they're hitting good on a jig and a worm, we switch over to plastic, kind of save ourselves the hassle of putting a worm on every cast. But there's been some days down there where, pretty much every other cast is a fish. So,
We talked about, because we had that cool stretch throughout the early part of the year, and even now the days start out really cool. I mean, until you get to about noon or 1, then it really starts heating up. Are you going at it differently? I mean, obviously switching maybe in the middle of the day if you stay out longer.
Boy, by noon it's getting pretty warm. So by noon, I wanted to put the top on my boat and maybe just do a little trolling just to kind of break the heat up a little bit. We haven't had the crazy winds. I mean, at least I haven't been out there when the winds have just been ripping. So a lot of times it's been flat calm and just a little bit too warm. So if I have the option, I'm going to fish like a 6 to 2 or 7 to 2, just earlier and get off the water earlier as well.
What about river fishing? You heard anything good or bad there?
Haven't heard much on the Platte system. I know a lot of guys are kind of starting to hit the bighorns and some of those other, smaller mountain creeks, and having a great time. A lot of good brookies being caught, and just a lot less people, it seems like. And so if you have the option or opportunity to get out and maybe explore a different part of the country, and I know you've been all over the place.
Yeah.
And so if you just kind of focus on river fishing or creek fishing and kind of start exploring some new things, I think you're going to be pretty happy with it.
It's interesting going up to Buffalo just a couple of weekends ago and talking to people there. You get the locals mixed in with all the people that are in visiting for the summer, and they're excited there as much as we are here about fishing. So I mean, statewide, I think it's pretty solid this year.
Yeah, I mean, now's a great time to get out and enjoy it, because before too long we're gonna have winter knocking on our door.
Yeah. It's the other W word that people hate, and that's winter. Are you getting ready for the championship for the Walleye Stampede, which is coming up in 2 weeks?
Yep. Our top 60 teams, based on point standings for the first 3 events, were invited to this championship at Boysen Reservoir, and that's going to be August 19th and 20th. And I talked to a few guys that have been over there already, and the water levels kind of starting to stabilize a little bit. It had been up in like 110%. It was already, water was covering some campgrounds in the Tough Creek area. That's how high it was. But the fishing seems like it's picking up, and the water's not as muddy, and there's not as much water coming into it. So the next couple weeks, I think, the fishing over there is going to be fantastic, and I expect that we're going to have some pretty big weights for that tournament.
Awesome. Well, if you're going out fishing this weekend, or maybe you're going to go hiking or camping, come on in and see them here at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
Welcome back to Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors. And I stress outdoors because we have a guest today that is extreme outdoors, especially when it comes to Wyoming. And Wyoming is known for hunting, fishing, camping, hiking. And Linda Fitchie, who is with the Outdoor Recreation Department, the Wild Parks, and the Outdoor Recreation Pathfinder. And Linda, thanks for coming on. This position you're in right now is maybe my dream position.
It is definitely my dream position.
So what you do basically is, you go out, you find great paths, you find great things to do in Wyoming, and then you relay that information to other people.
That is exactly right. Sometimes people are limited on what they can do in Wyoming because they don't either have the resources to find what they want to do. They don't know how to go about doing it. Fishing, for example, they might not know how to fish or where to start. And we're here to help them.
Do you go from the bottom up then? So if someone comes to you and is like, Linda, I have no clue about how to trout fish. I mean, are you walking them through the whole process?
Either I can walk them through the process. I do enjoy fishing very much. Or I can put them in touch with people that are great with those kinds of things. Some of our outfitters or guides. And sometimes it's just something as easy as like Walleye Unlimited. I mean, they really step up and help with a lot of fishing derbies around the state. And there are so many people that are willing to share their experience that there really shouldn't be limits to that. If somebody wants to do it, we have ways to help them.
And that's one of the things that we always say on this show is you should never let anything keep you from being outside and doing things, whether that's the weather, whether that's conditions, or, maybe the season. There's always something to do outdoors in Wyoming.
I totally agree. Yeah, we don't let weather really dictate what we do because it's going to snow. It's Wyoming.
Yeah.
It's going to be cold. There's great things to do during that time if you focus on it.
So some of the places, just Casper area, that we have that some people that I've talked to said, well, I've never checked that out, or I've never been there, really surprises me. And that even comes with Casper Mountain. There are people that have lived in Casper their entire lives and have never ventured out. And if they're nervous or scared, that's where you really come in.
Exactly. I've always been amazed by people that look right past what's right here. Casper Mountain. I used to take a class out to Independence Rock. So many of the students had never been outside Casper city limits. They were freaking out when they saw all the open space.
One of the things, I've only lived here a couple of years, but my goal was to see anything and everything that I could in Wyoming. So I hit the ground running and I go and do adventures. I try every weekend or at least once a week to be out doing things. And what are some of the possible places that people may not have an idea about that you're like, oh, well, you've got to go see this?
I always suggest the Bridle Trail and going up to Garden Creek Falls. I really try to tell people, pretend you are the tourist and Casper is where your destination is. What things do you think you would want to see? Or you have a guest coming into town. Well, a lot of people just have never thought about it. Independence Rock is an amazing part of our history. I love going up there and seeing all of the etchings and things in there. But things that are close to Casper that are just amazing. Like I said, Bridle Trail, Braille Trail, Muddy Mountain. It's not really that much further past Casper Mountain. But if you've never explored those areas, it's very difficult to explain it. Natural Bridge between here and Douglas. So many people drive past that sign, have no idea how beautiful that area is. There are so many easy to access things. Big Muddy along the Old Glen Rock Highway. Just looks like a big pond kind of set back off the highway, but it's pretty cool. There's like a little area that the pond is only maybe 30 feet from the North Platte River. And you can walk along through there. It's very quiet. It's very relaxing. I love those areas.
And there's so many places like that all over the state that you were talking earlier before we went on that you're a fan of Thermopolis. Thermopolis is just a wonderland of things to do, not just the hot springs, but, Legend Rock, where the petroglyphs are, is just outside of Thermopolis.
Exactly. And they've got the dinosaur museum there, and you can go on digs. I mean, you're outside and you're digging for dinosaur bones. It's every little kid's dream come true. Yeah. And sitting in the hot springs, of course, is a big plus. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people kind of get pigeonholed with, I'm going to go to Thermopolis and I'm going to go sit in the hot springs. There are so many other things you can do outside there. Going up to see the buffalo. Lots of times you don't get that opportunity to be that close to buffalo without going to Yellowstone. Right. And it's much more accessible, I think.
Yeah, and that Hot Springs State Park is also another one of the great state parks that we have in Wyoming that, probably gets overlooked because of all the different options. And if people have questions or people are looking for adventures like that, all they have to do is reach out to the Pathfinder program. Exactly.
And that's what we are set up to do. Something within our organization is something called our Wonder Map. And that is, it has 16 different layers now. We just bumped up from 15, 16 different layers of adventures. So maybe you want to go camping, you want to go to a state park, you want water nearby for fishing, and you want to see an historic site. All those things you can pick on our Wonder Map, and it'll kind of do a Venn diagram type thing where each of the little bubbles, see which ones are close together, pick it, and start exploring different areas you can go.
Wow. So, and it just shows up on the same map and really does the plan for you?
It doesn't make the plan for you, but it will definitely show you, like, this campground would be an amazing place for you to go if you want water. If you
Right,
want
okay.
camping, it's really close nearby. All those things are right there.
And another thing that I'm fascinated with and have been since I got to Wyoming is the trail system that we have here. If you're an ATV or a side-by-side or even horseback rider, there are so many thousand miles of trails throughout the state that you guys have all the maps and the areas and everything.
I'm not sure if I remember the exact number, but I think it's close to 1,000 trails that we have on our hiking trails layer. And that's just trails with trailheads, which might sound funny to say it like that, but to have a starting point to send people to. This is where you could go to. This is the trailhead. Go explore from there. And then it has all the details, how long it is, how difficult the hike might be. Sometimes there's links to all trails. Sometimes it's to Forest Service to give you more information. But we really want our map to be the one everybody would go to if it's outdoor recreation. We've got all the information for you. We strive to make that the best map you can go to for all of the outdoor recreation.
All right, Linda. So you guys have the interactive map and you have all of these plans. And are there other resources that are available?
Yes, we have on our website, again, WyoRec, we have something called the events calendar. And just for 2023, we already have over 1,000 events listed on our calendar, all outdoor recreation related. We try to get to every community calendar we can in the area, the state calendar for outdoor recreation and for tourism. And we put every single event that we can find that's outdoor related on that calendar because, we want it to be the go-to source for people if they want to go outdoor recreating. What can you find to do this weekend? Where are you? I mean, that's one of the first things they ask. Where are you going to be? Where do you want to travel? How far do you want to go? These are the events for this weekend. I think last weekend we had about 50 events, and that's around the state. And there's probably a few that we miss out on just because of not having access to that information.
Right. But so it definitely is a great place for you to go. And again, we have said the word resource about a dozen times, in just a little segment of the show, because that's what it is. It's a resource program to help you get out and enjoy.
Yes. Very first one in the world like it. Go Wyoming.
Wyoming is such a great resource for outdoor lovers. And if you come to Wyoming, you're coming for something outdoors, whether it's going up to, one of the national parks or the national forest and camping and hiking. I mean, that's why you're coming here. And you guys have the resource that everyone needs to know about.
Our Wonder Map is easy to find. It's at WYOREC.org. So WyoRec. Just go to our WyoRec site and you can find the Wonder Map, easy to access, and you can download that information onto your phone. It's not an app per se, but if it's on your phone, then you can find it when you're out in the field and don't have cell service.
So what are some of your favorite things that, since you've taken over this job just a couple of years, because the program is really new, it's only been around since 2021. So I'm sure that you've had to go out and do some exploring on your own, just so you know.
That is exactly right. Originally, when I started, my region was Converse, Natrona, and Niobrara counties. And I was so excited because it's areas that I'm familiar with. But then you kind of go back to you get pigeonholed into what you normally do and to go and venture out. So I remember my very first time going to Niobrara County and trying to explore all that they had to offer too, because it is completely different than Casper. They don't have the mountain. They don't have a state park. I mean, there's a lot of limiting factors for that. To find new things for people to do or to try was definitely a little bit out of my comfort zone. Okay, what can I do?
And I think that's what a lot of people end up having is, well, I know what to do in Casper, or I know what to do in Glen Rock or Douglas, but man, I've never been to, Newcastle. What is there up in Newcastle that I can do? And gosh, it's so cool to have a resource like this that I think it's so important that people know all about this. And Linda, I know that you and I were talking about a bunch of campers that were coming in town for a holiday, and you helped them and kind of shocked them.
Yes, they wanted something near water. They didn't want a lake. They didn't want a mountain, and they wanted to stay close to Casper. And I ended up finding chalk buttes. because they did have a camper, and some of the little campgrounds between here and Alcova are only tent camping, but Chalk Buttes actually had something for campers. They were the only ones at the campground. The kids could go fishing. They loved it. It's one of their new favorite places.
That is incredible. The fact that Memorial Day weekend and there was nobody camping there. And, exactly. If you would have gone 10 miles down the road, probably, then all the campgrounds were full.
Exactly. And a lot of places have gone to reservation systems. So if you're not set up and ready to go, then you would not have found a spot.
Wow. It is so cool. And you can go, it's wyoutdoorrec.org. You go to the wildparks.org site and get all the information. And Linda, can they actually directly reach out to you if they have specific questions?
Of course. My state phone number is 307-777-7636. You can call that. It comes directly to me.
Oh, okay. And you also have email too. It's Linda, Linda .Fittje, Fittje @wyo.gov, right?
Either way.
Well, what I will do is I will have all this information up in our radio station's app so that you can go and directly get in contact with Linda and start your outdoor recreation adventures. And I know it's almost August. We're almost into August, but that doesn't mean the outdoor fun stops because, some parts of the state don't get snow in the winter, or some parts of this state gets lots of snow in the winter. Maybe you're looking for an outdoor snow adventure. You can get it through these guys. But, Linda, it's been fantastic, and I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for all that you're doing to bring the awareness to the people of Wyoming and beyond.
Anytime. I enjoy it. Thank you.
Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors with Drew Kirby. If you have a question, want to make a comment, or have an idea for a show topic, message us on the My Country mobile app. Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.